How dangerous do you think is a really powerful slingshot? You'd be surprised. I definitely was. I'm talking about slingshots that generate more momentum than a 45 caliber firearm. And I'm not even saying that to be overdramatic. They actually tested it. And finding that out made me pretty upset. Because a few weeks ago, I made a video testing a bunch of slingshots, trying to find out how dangerous they are. And well, I used to love that video. And now I don't. Because it's completely inaccurate. All the slingshots I tested in that video are simply toys compared to the really powerful ones. And so, to redeem myself and actually answer the question, well, I'm gonna try to build one of the most powerful slingshots on the planet. A slingshot capable of ending anything in front of it and behind of it. Compare it to the best slingshot of the previous video, and then see what happens when I test it against a ballistic dummy. This is the prototype I made for my custom slingshot, and I'm gonna explain the features of each component as I build them. Starting from the fork. This is where I'm gonna attach multiple elastic bands and throw massive steel bars with them. And so it needs to be really tough. If while pulling the bands, one of these two pieces broke, it will fly towards me like a bullet, and that, my friend, might be the end of the video. And the channel. Sorry, mom. Well, to avoid that, I made a sandwich of materials that I'm gonna glue together to create the elements of the slingshot. The sandwich has a strong core to make it tough, and for that I could have used aluminum, hardwood, or even steel. But I got a lot of polycarbonate laying around from a previous video, and since it's an incredibly tough material, I decided to go with this one. Then I prepared a few thin sheets of wood, and also red acrylic, to place on top of the polycarbonate. These are mainly there for aesthetic reasons, and the effect I would like to obtain is something like this. Aim for the stars, they said. Anyways, to glue the layers together, I'm gonna use epoxy, which should work with all the layers of the sandwich. But just to be extra safe, I'm also sanding the surfaces of polycarbonate and acrylic, so that the glue can form a stronger bond with them. So I'm pouring the two components of the glue into a cup. I mix them together for a while.
Looks like I'm cooking or something.
And then I'm spreading it evenly on each surface of the layers. The problem is that I used way too much epoxy, and now the layers keep sliding on each others. So now I'm panicking while trying to clamp everything down, worrying the layers are gonna get stuck in the wrong position and I'll have to throw everything away and lose another day starting from scratch. But it ended up working.
Now I gotta wait 3 days. It's been 3 days. I'm gonna remove the clamps and see if it actually worked.
Had a few doubts about this. One, are the clamps even gonna come out? And yes, they do. Kind of. 2, did the epoxy dry and are the layers fixed in place? Also yes, it feels pretty solid. And 3, how strong is the connection between the layers? Well, either the resin is really strong, or I am really weak, but the reality is that there is not an answer for this one right now. I just gotta hope for the best and see what happens when I test it. The next step is cropping the shape of fork, handle, and arm brace out of the sandwich block. To do that, I'm using a bandsaw, and after the first cut, I'm happy to see that there is no gap between the layers, which is definitely a good sign. And so I'm trying to cut all the elements, following their shapes as best as I can. And it took me about 40 minutes, but here they are. Fork, handle, and arm brace, or at least the raw shape of them. Now I'm gonna use the belt grinder to smooth out the edges and the surfaces, starting with the fork. Right now it's definitely thick, but the idea is to grind it in a way that it's gonna make the pattern come out. The problem is that I massively underestimated this step and massively overestimated my skills, and after 30 minutes of absolute random grinding, alright, I completely messed up. Like, no, it doesn't look bad, it's just modern art and you don't understand it. I'm joking. So I'm gonna make a simpler and better one. The good news is that with a spare fork, I can test how tough it is. Yep. It's perfect. So I prepared new layers, glued them with epoxy, weighted, cropped, smoothed the edges, grinded, being extra careful to not mess it up again. And now I'm back to where I stopped. Next, I'm using this fascinating machine to smooth the edges, and honestly, I started to get pretty excited. And this is how the fork looks now.
I swear I'm so proud. Now I need to sand it, then polish it.
To make the wood shiny and the polycarbonate transparent.
And then I'm gonna do the handle and the arm brace basically the same way.
I didn't even finish the fork, and I'm already thinking about when this thing is gonna be done, and when I'm gonna be able to test it. Before that though, I need to sand it. And I already know sanding is gonna take a while. I need to go from a 2200 grit sandpaper to 1000 grit sandpaper. So I'm gonna just skip this process. But while my slightly younger self suffers for the next 5 hours, I wanna thank this plate for supporting this project. And yes, that thing moves. I just finished the workshop and I wanted to personalize it a little bit. So I picked a few posters and they just arrived. And they looked good from their website, but seeing them in person, it actually got me excited. This is insane. It's so cool. Spyro. I used to play this with my sister on our PS1 when we were kids. She's about to have a baby now. I love it. The posters feel high quality and sturdy. Let me try to zoom in. And the clarity on the images is really good. This plate also just launched a new product called Display Textura, which basically gives extra clarity to the images by having a 3D texture on the posters. Hanging the posters is also intuitive and fast, and this plate gives you all the tools you need. Wipe the wall, stick the protective leaf, stick the magnet to the leaf. I'm using a 3D one, but they also have it flat. And that's it basically. Took me like 4 minutes to set up 3 posters. There are over 2 million artworks available in the Display catalog, and you can pick from original art or licensed design like Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, or Dune. I wish I got that one actually. You can also get them right now by going to display.com/MikeShake or use my promo code MikeShake and you'll get a really nice discount. I'm also leaving a link in the description if you want to check them out at the end of the video. Anyways, 5 hours later, the sanding was completed. Then I used an improvised buffing machine to polish the polycarbonate, and after grinding a little slot where I'm gonna attach the elastic bands, I finished the fork using linseed oil and wax. And here it is. I really like how it turned out. But maybe it's just because I made it, kinda like my mom that likes me regardless. Well, for sure it's better than the last one. It's also pretty big. This is how it looks compared to a normal slingshot, but it should fit well the kind of power I'm going for. Alright, I'm gonna make the handle and the arm brace. And so I did it all over again for the arm brace, which likely took much less compared to the fork, thanks to this simpler shape. And after sanding it, this is how it looks. Now the last element I need to make is the handle. Aside from smoothing out the edges, I'm trying to grind the handle to make it fit perfectly with my hand. So I keep grinding and testing it, then adjusting it based on how it feels. And after completing the rough shape, I spent a few hours sanding it by hand to smooth out the curves as much as possible. And as the last step, I'm applying the oil as I did with the previous elements. This is how the final handle looks. And I like it, but most importantly, it feels very comfortable. And I can't wait to test this thing. Like that, all the elements are done. Now I can put them together with the main frame, and then I'm gonna test it against the targets. My custom slingshot increases the draw length compared to a normal one. Basically, how far I can stretch the bands before releasing them. And with more elastic mass, the power increases exponentially. So to connect all the elements together, I'm gonna use this steel profile. I need to cut it a little bit first. I'm not exactly sure how long should I make this frame though. The longer, the better, but I need to be able to use it. So I'm just measuring the distance between arm brace and handle, and based on that, I ended up using another profile I had in the shop. This one is exactly 1 meter, and if this version ends up being too weak, I'm gonna use the longer stick to make an even more extreme version. For that reason, I also want all the elements to be removable from the main frame. And so, to connect them to the frame, I thought about using steel brackets. I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it though. If I'm making a mistake, let me know right now, so that I can stop before this thing flies towards me when I test it. Alright. If I die, it's your fault. So I cleaned up the profile using the belt grinder, and then I sanded by hand, fixing the mistakes I made on the belt grinder. One day, I'm gonna learn how to use this thing. But today is not that day. Anyways, this is how the steel profile ended up looking. Now, to connect the brackets to the frame, I'm drilling 3 holes of 5mm into the steel profile. Basically like this. After that, I can install the brackets, in which I'm gonna place the fork. I actually also mounted 2 brackets at the end of the steel bar, so that this way I can connect the arm brace to one end of the profile and the fork to the other. Through that though, I also need to drill a few holes into the elements. And this step is kinda scary, because the acrylic could shatter in the process, and that would mean starting from scratch. So to avoid that, I'm using a special bit that should work both with plastic and wood. Then I started drilling 3 holes into the fork. This process took me like 30 minutes. I went very, very slow to avoid damaging the layers. And I think it kinda worked. At this point, I can insert the balls that I actually grinded to make them look nicer. And I also added 3 rubber spacers, since the back of the wood is not perfectly flat. And I hope this will help distribute the pressure.
I think it works. Yes.
I believe it looks pretty good. But the best part is not even the look. What surprised me the most is how premium it feels, given who built it. It doesn't wobble at all, it doesn't make noises, and it feels very sturdy. Now I'm repeating the process to install the arm brace, and this is how it looks on the profile. And seeing it like that makes me pretty confident this thing is gonna crush bones. Hopefully not mine. Anyways, only the handle is missing at this point. And I'm not exactly sure what's the best way to connect this one. And so, I'm doing the first thing I thought about. I'm drilling a big hole into the handle. And my plan is to glue a steel rod into it, so that then I can easily mount it to the frame. To glue the rod, I'm using a fast drying glue that should work well with polycarb. That wasn't a crack, it was air coming out of the handle. Now there is one last detail I need to add to the handle. The bolts on the fork and the arm brace basically act as pins, providing extra strength to keep the layers together. And since the handle doesn't have those, I decided to add 4 small bolts to it. They don't compromise the comfort, and this way I'm sure the layers are gonna stay together even if I drop it. And to mention the words of a wise German man I'm gonna introduce in a bit, it's not ugly, it's effective. And now I'm mounting the handle using a piece of leather to distribute the stress between the handle and the frame. And like that, the custom slingshot is ready. I really believe this could be up there with the most powerful slingshots in the world. But I guess I'm gonna find out soon when I test it. I don't know if I should be excited or scared. I'm excited though. But the reason why I picked this design over some crazier ones I had is pretty fascinating. It looks fairly simple, but this design should be the most powerful one you can make for a handheld slingshot. And the reason why I know that is this man.
Hello and welcome to the Slingshot channel.
While checking the comments in my previous slingshot video, I saw this one that threw me right into the rabbit hole that actually made me start this project. Jörg is a German god, right on top of the slingshot food chain, and he set a world record of 135 joules with a 25mm steel ball. And just to clarify, 135 joules is closer to a small firearm in terms of power than it is to a normal slingshot. And since I don't have much experience with slingshots, and most importantly, I'm not German, I reached out to him. And he actually replied. Jörg gave me a lot of valuable information that allowed me to get to this point. And most importantly, he made me realize that there is a serious risk involved in what I'm about to do. And he also suggested me to scrap all my other designs, besides this one I built. And it's basically a new version of the Starship, which is the slingshot he used to set the world record. And so, now I can install the bands, and then I'm gonna test it. The size and the number of layers you need depends on the weight of the ammo you're using. Heavier ammo require more bands, which are much harder to pull, but they also generate more power. So to find out the dimensions of the bands I need for all the balls I'm gonna test, I'm using an equation that Jörg created. Basically, based on the weight of the ammo you use and the draw length, it tells you the dimension and the number of bands you need. And to find my draw length, I measure my draw length with a normal slingshot. Have no idea if this is the right way to do it. And I added the extra length of the frame. And with that, I got a total of 198 centimeters, which is a lot, but I'm using a smaller one to be conservative. For maximum performance, bands also need to be tapered. Basically, they need to be larger towards the fork and smaller towards the pouch. This allows the ammo to accelerate faster, and therefore increase the speed and the power. After that, I can attach the bands to the pouch, and the process is pretty straightforward for the most part of it.
Otherwise, the friction causes the knot to go all messed up, and you can actually just break the elastic.
And here is how they look. At this point, I can attach the bands to the slingshot, and like that, the build is finally completed.
It's ready!
And so now, there is only the fun and potentially lethal step left.
Alright then, let's test it.
Now, before risking my life with the massive balls, I wanna find out if my custom slingshot, well, if it works, and also if it's actually more powerful than the ones I tested in my old video. And so, I'm gonna gradually increase the dimension of the ammo and the number of bands. And I'm gonna measure energy, penetration, and damage for each one of them. I feel like a juggernaut. I know you're probably thinking it's maybe too much for this small ammo. I'm actually worried it's not gonna be enough. But I guess there is only one way to find out. And well, it turns out that this thing works pretty well.
125. Yeah, it's fast.
Out of 5 shots, the best one I got is 130 meters a second or 426 feet per second. And if you consider that a 9mm bullet travels at around 1200 feet per second, that's a lot. So with the 8mm steel ball, the custom slingshot generates 1.6 times more energy than my best old one. This is the weakest setup I'm gonna test, and it already broke the catch box behind the wooden panel. I also tested a different brand of rubber, but I got very similar results. So now it's time for the second test with the 8mm ball. Penetration. And at my first shot, the ball went on the side of the gelatin block. And I actually thought it was a fluke.
No.
Because it went way too deep.
Oh, no way. Jeez.
But then when I tried again, the second shot was perfectly in the middle, and it went deeper than the first. If we compare the penetration of my old slingshots compared to this one, this is insane. The old slingshots are also not lethal with an 8mm ball. But given this penetration, do you think it's gonna be lethal? 8mm ball, test number 3, damage. And so I stretched the bands as much as I could, and I shot.
No way.
At first, I thought the ball actually cracked the skull. But then I saw it.
It stopped.
The ball went into the gelatin, but it stopped on the skull.
Let's keep it there.
Also, what's wrong with your nose, man? Jeez, I didn't notice that. Anyways, this slingshot is already more impressive than the ones I tested in my old video.
And this is literally the weakest possible setup I have for this one.
So, I'm very curious to see what's gonna happen with the big balls. But in the meantime, these are all the results I got with the smallest one. Next, I'm shooting 10mm steel balls. And to shoot them, I'm gonna use a double layer setup. Basically, 2 bands per side. And I was expecting the 10mm balls to be significantly slower compared to the previous ones. But the speed actually didn't drop very much.
119.1. That's a lot.
Out of 5 shots, the best one I got was 124.4 meters a second, which gives it a big bump in terms of power. And my poor catch box knows something about it. Test number 2, penetration. So I was expecting bigger balls to have less penetration power. But
it almost went through.
With a 10mm steel ball, I got a penetration of 13.9 centimeters.
Before trying the ballistic dummy, I also want to shoot a few different targets.
This is not part of the official test, and I could totally avoid it, but I won't. So I shot a watermelon, then a coconut, which is pretty hard, but it still went straight through, and then a soda can. And at this point, I'm kinda thinking this might be lethal already.
Alright. Nope. Wait, what is that? That was
anticlimactic. I'm not exactly sure if he bounced on the bone or he just went straight there. Either way, I'm gonna try again, aiming at the forehead.
Oh, no way. Went once again perfectly inside the eye. In the other one. Oh, come on. I'm gonna try to hit it again.
But once again, it didn't crack.
So I think the balls were just bouncing off the bones.
Anyways, these are all the results I got for the 10mm steel balls.
And now it gets scary.
20mm lead balls. Like, these are the bands I just used, and these are the bands I'm gonna use now. 3 huge flat bands per side. And for this one, I also had to build a bigger pouch.
I'm scared. For the first time since I started testing this thing, now I'm actually scared.
As a disclaimer, I don't think this is wise, I don't think this is safe, and I don't think it's gonna be enjoyable to use a monster like that. But I just wanna go for it. This is how it looks with the flat bands connected to it. And with that, I'm ready to try it. Kind of. And well, as expected, these bands are way harder to pull compared to the previous ones. But even though this setup highlights my poor technique, and the lead ball actively tried to kill me, it was actually working pretty well.
How much was that? 57.9.
And that means 79.3 joules of energy, which is a lot. Still, I wanted to keep trying for 2 reasons. First, because I know I can top my previous speed. I just need to develop a slightly decent technique and build up confidence. And second, because I'm kinda loving the distraction this thing is able to generate. And I can't wait to test it against the targets. But then, I made a mistake. Somebody said that if you run when you can't walk, you'll probably fall. And that was the sound of the steel ball hitting the fork.
I broke it. Yeah. I broke the fork. That's a bad one.
This has been a very unfortunate turn of events. I got an allergy reaction. It's pouring and it wasn't even supposed to rain. My slingshot broke. On the other side though, I'm still alive, and most importantly though, the polycarbonate is very tough indeed. It doesn't even have a scratch on it. And so I found a temporary fix so that I can keep using it. You know, it is what it is. It just lived long enough to become the villain. So I'm gonna just wait for the sun, and then I'm gonna finish the test. How's it going, guys? Today's tomorrow and sun shines. Now you know why that happened. By watching the slow motion of the incident, I realized that I pushed down my hand right before releasing the pouch. And well, I just gotta try avoid doing that again. I also just built a much deeper armrest, since the helmet sticking out made it kinda hard to stretch the bands comfortably.
Alright then, let's see what happens. I'm gonna just try to stretch this as much as I can. So if you hear weird noises, that's why.
And so I wanted to measure the energy once again. And after shooting at the target a few times, I actually topped the previous result.
59.6! 59.6! Yes, that's better!
That is 84.1 joules. That's good, depending on which side you play for.
I think I could actually get more than that with a better technique and more practice. But I'll take it. Let's do the penetration test.
For this test, and also the next ones, I'm gonna be using the black bands. The yellow ones keep breaking, and these perform as well while being more durable. I also removed the wood and the acrylic from the back of the fork, and I installed the new brackets.
Do you think it's gonna go more or less in than the small ones?
Well, none of that happened.
Oh my god! Did you see that? Jeez, this was the best investment ever!
The ammo basically bounced on the surface of the gelatin and came flying back towards me. That would have hurt. Anyways, before shooting the ballistic dummy, I tested the damage against a few targets. And I missed the first shot, throwing the ball in the air, and I have no idea where it went. But with the second shot, I got it. So, it's time for the final test. Damage. And I really have no idea what to expect. But I guess, let's find out.
Oh yeah. Let me show you. You went through the nose. Oh my god.
And he cracked the bomb below it.
You see that? Ready?
So then I shot again, trying to aim a little higher. And once again, the ammo penetrated, and it shattered the bone around the eye.
So I want to try to shoot another one on the forehead and see what happens.
And well, this time, I actually hit the forehead. So, I guess this thing is very dangerous. That was my honest reaction while that thing was filling up. Nothing. I did nothing. Now that the liquid is gone, it's pretty clear to see what happened. The ammo went straight through the forehead, and it actually almost came out from the back of the head. These are all the results for the 20mm lead ball.
And so, to answer the question, how dangerous is a slingshot? I guess it depends on the slingshot.
I'm gonna fix this slingshot and paint it, and I'll post the final version on Instagram. Follow me there if you wanna see it, along with updates on the next videos. I'm gonna keep making cool things like this one, so if you like this video, consider subscribing and check another one.